The old workshop smelled of cedar oil and time itself. Elias Hawthorne stood alone beneath the single hanging bulb. Its soft yellow light trembled across the scarred wooden benches, touching half-finished gears and tiny brass springs that had waited years for his hands. In those weathered hands, he held the Hawthorne Memory Clock, the last one, 42 years. That was how long it had taken him to finish her. His fingers trembled as he gently pressed the crown. A soft click broke the silence. Then came the sound. His wife's laughter rose first light, warm, impossibly alive. It filled the small room like sunlight through old windows. A moment later, her gentle voice followed, whispering the lullaby she used to sing to their daughter every night before sleep. Elias closed his eyes. A single tear slipped slowly down the deep lines of his face and disappeared into the gray of his beard. "I never thought," he whispered, his voice rough and quiet, barely louder than the ticking around him. "I never thought my own daughter would take the soul of this family and sell it to strangers." 4 nights earlier, the workshop had felt exactly the same. Elias had sat right here in this worn chair, the only light coming from his old laptop screen. Outside, Vermont wind whispered against the windows. Inside, the grand launch event in New York played out like a scene from someone else's life. Crystal chandeliers sparkled. The hall was packed with sharp suits and confident smiles, and on the bright stage stood Knox Sterling, 33 years old. Sharp yef, even sharper ambition. Knox lifted the Sterling Echo Watch high, letting every camera catch its polished curves. "Today," he said, voice ringing with perfect confidence, "we're not just selling a watch, we're selling memory itself. Our proprietary Echo technology captures the voices, the laughter, the heartbeats of the people you love, and brings them back whenever you need them most. This isn't borrowed, this isn't inspired. This is the future built from the ground up by my team." The crowd exploded into applause. Back in the dark workshop, Elias felt his chest tighten until breathing hurt. He leaned closer to the screen, eyes narrowing. Every tiny gear ratio, the exact way the memory cylinder engaged with the playback spring. The soft, rhythmic tick that mimicked a living heartbeat. Even the hidden engraving pattern on the inner plate, the one he had designed alone after long nights of grief, it was all there. His secret. The mechanism he had never shown the world. The one he had only shared in careful pieces with his wife while she was still fighting her illness, and later, in quiet moments, with his daughter Willow. Now, Knox Sterling was raising $8.7 million on it, calling it his own breakthrough. Smiling wide as the investors clapped, and in the front row, eyes shining with love and pride, sat Willow Hawthorne, his only daughter. She clapped harder than anyone. Elias watched without moving. Each round of applause felt like another small wound opening inside his chest. When the live stream finally ended and the screen went black, he sat motionless in the silence. The workshop clocks continued their steady ticking, but to Elias they sounded slower now, heavier. He reached out with shaking hands and carefully placed the Hawthorne Memory Clock back on its velvet stand. The faint glow of its hands caught the last light from the laptop before he closed it. For a long time, he simply stared into the growing darkness. Memories moved behind his eyes, his wife's smile the day he first showed her the unfinished design. Willow as a little girl pressing her ear against the case to hear the lullaby. The empty chair where his wife used to sit and watch him work. Then came the image of Knox, standing on that stage. Willow's proud face beside him. Elias drew in a slow, painful breath. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. It was quieter now, colder, carrying the weight of every year he had stayed silent. This time, he whispered into the empty workshop, "I will not stay silent." The single bulb above the bench flickered once, then went dark. Only the soft, steady ticking of the Hawthorne Memory Clock remained in the black. The weekend came too soon. Snow had begun to dust the quiet streets of Stowe when Willow's car pulled up outside the old workshop. Elias stood at the window watching his daughter step out, her cheeks flushed from the cold and something brighter excitement, maybe even joy. She looked different already. Her coat was new, expensive. Her smile carried the shine of New York lights. "Dad!" she called as she pushed open the workshop door, bringing in a rush of cold air. "You should have seen it. The launch was incredible. Knox was amazing." Elias forced a small smile and wiped his hands on an old cloth. The scent of cedar oil still clung to his fingers. Willow crossed the room and hugged him tightly, longer than usual. When she pulled back, her eyes were sparkling. "They raised $8.7 million, Dad. 8.7. Investors are calling the Echo Watch the future of wearable memory. Knox says this is just the beginning. We're talking about moving to New York full-time, together." She laughed softly, the sound light and hopeful in the quiet workshop. Elias felt his chest tighten again, the same ache from 4 nights ago returning sharper than before. He tried to stay calm. He really did. But the words slipped out before he could stop them. "Willow, that mechanism inside the watch, the way it captures voices, the memory cylinder, it's the same as mine." Willow's smile faltered for a second, then returned. A little tighter now. "Dad, please, not this again." "I'm not imagining it," Elias said quietly, his voice steady but heavy. "I've been building that design for over 40 years. The gears, the spring tension, even the heartbeat tick. It's too exact to be coincidence." Willow stepped back, folding her arms across her chest. The joy in her face began to cool. "You're jealous," she said, the words coming out sharper than she probably intended. "I knew you might feel this way, but Knox built this with his team, from the ground up. You don't understand how fast things move in his world. This isn't your dusty little workshop anymore. This is real innovation, real money, real future." Elias felt the sting of her words like cold metal against his skin. He opened his mouth to speak, but stopped. The full truth, the live stream, the exact matches, the way Knox had smiled while claiming it all sat heavy on his tongue. But he swallowed it. Not yet. Instead, he looked down at his hands, scarred and steady from years of patient work. "I just want you to be careful," he said softly. Willow let out a short, frustrated breath. "Careful? Dad, I'm happy. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm going somewhere. Knox believes in me. He sees my potential in marketing, in building something big. Why can't you just be proud of that?" The silence that followed felt louder than any argument. Elias nodded slowly, choosing stillness over fire. Later that afternoon, after Willow had gone into town to meet old friends, a familiar knock sounded at the workshop door. Theo Langford stepped inside, brushing snow from his gray coat. At 66, he moved with the same careful precision he had always used when repairing delicate clockwork. "You look like hell, Elias," Theo said gently, setting down a small thermos of coffee. Elias gave a tired smile. "Been a long week." They sat together on the old bench. Theo listened as Elias spoke in low tones about the launch, about the watch, about the fear growing in his chest. "You can't let this slide," Theo said finally, his voice firm but kind. "That design is your life's work. More than that, it's your wife's memory. If you stay quiet, you'll lose more than the clock." Elias stared at the floor, fingers tracing an old scar on his thumb. That evening, his phone buzzed with a message from Finn Calder, Willow's closest friend since high school. A video attachment. Elias hesitated, thumb hovering over the play button. Then he pressed it. In the short clip, Knox stood in a private pitch meeting, gesturing excitedly at a prototype. "This memory ecosystem? It came to me in a flash of inspiration. Completely original. No one's ever done anything like it." Finn had added only one line of text. "He said this last month. Thought you should see it." Elias watched the clip 3 times, each viewing deepening the quiet anger in his blood. The next morning, while Willow was still sleeping upstairs in her old room, Elias moved with slow purpose. He opened the locked drawer beneath his workbench and took out the yellowed drawings from 1,987 ink, faded, but lines still sharp. He flipped through his old leather journals, pages filled with careful notes about gear ratios and memory springs, written during long nights beside his sick wife. Then he picked up the phone and dialed a number he had saved years ago. Dr. Naomi Reyes answered on the third ring. "Elias Hawthorne," she said warmly. "It's been a long time. I need your help," he replied, voice low. "There's something you documented in the museum archives, something that belongs to me." He spoke carefully, revealing only what he needed to. Dr. Reyes listened in silence, then promised to check the records and call him back. As he hung up, footsteps creaked on the stairs. Willow appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, hair messy from sleep. She looked softer in the morning light, more like the girl who used to sit on the bench and watch him work. "Dad," she said quietly, "I'm moving to New York. Next month. Knox and we're going to live together. I wanted you to hear it from me first." Elias felt the words land like stones in still water. He looked at his daughter, the same eyes that once lit up when he let her wind the small practice clocks, the same smile that had carried him through the hardest years after her mother died. And in that moment, he understood with painful clarity. If he did nothing, he might lose her forever. He nodded once, forcing his voice to stay even. "I hear you, Willow." But inside his chest, something had already begun to shift. The quiet decision was forming. Not yet loud, not yet spoken, but real and unstoppable. The night felt heavier than any winter Elias had known. He stood alone in the workshop long after Willow had gone to bed. The old clocks on the walls ticked steadily, but to him they sounded like accusations. His hands moved before his mind could stop them. One by one, he swept the delicate tools from the bench. Tiny screwdrivers clattered to the floor. Precision files snapped under his boot. The small vise he had used for 40 years cracked as he brought it down hard against the wooden edge. Gears and springs scattered like broken memories across the dusty boards. He was breathing hard, chest rising and falling in ragged bursts. Why had he given so much of his life to something so fragile? A sob tore from his throat as he grabbed the heavy mallet. He brought it down again and again on the half-finished movements, smashing years of careful work into twisted metal and splintered wood. When the rage finally ebbed, he dropped the mallet and sank to his knees amid the wreckage. Silence pressed in around him. Only one sound remained: the soft, unbroken ticking of the Hawthorne Memory Clock on its velvet stand. It had survived, untouched. Elias stared at it, through blurred eyes. Then he pulled out his phone with shaking fingers and opened a video call. Dr. Naomi Reyes answered from her office in Boston, her face kind but serious in the glow of her desk lamp. "Elias," she said gently, "you look like you haven't slept." He didn't waste time on pleasantries. In a low, broken voice, he told her everything. The launch in New York, the exact match of every mechanism, the way Knox had stood on stage and claimed it as his own, the fear that he was about to lose his daughter forever. Dr. Naomi Reyes listened without interrupting. When he finished, she leaned closer to the camera. "This is a serious violation of intellectual property," she said quietly. "Your drawings from 1987, the journal entries, the museum records I documented years ago, they're clear proof. I can help you, Elias. If you're ready to move forward, I'll stand with you." Elias closed his eyes for a long moment. "Thank you," he whispered. As the call ended, another notification appeared on his phone. An email from Lena Voss, the lead investor who had poured millions into Knox's company. The subject line was blank. Inside was only a short message. "I received an anonymous tip tonight. I need to see the original designs. Can we speak privately?" Theo had kept his promise. Elias stared at the screen, heart pounding with a strange mix of fear and relief. He did not reply. Not yet. The next evening, the storm broke inside the house. Willow stormed into the living room where Elias sat by the fireplace, her face pale with anger. "I saw the search history on the workshop computer," she said, voice trembling. "You've been looking up Knox. You contacted Dr. Reyes. You even had Theo send something to his biggest investor. What are you doing, Dad?" Elias rose slowly from his chair. "I'm protecting what's mine," he answered quietly. "Protecting?" Willow's laugh was sharp and painful. "You're trying to destroy the man I love. Knox has worked so hard for this. His team built that technology. And you're just an old man in a dusty shop who can't stand to see someone else succeed." The words cut deeper than any mallet. Elias looked at his daughter and saw something he had never seen before. Complete certainty. She stood entirely on Knox's side. No doubt, no hesitation. Only fierce loyalty to the man who had promised her the future. "I trusted you," Willow continued, tears shining in her eyes. "I thought you wanted me to be happy, but you're willing to ruin everything just because you feel left behind." Elias felt the last piece of his heart crack. He wanted to tell her the truth right then, show her the old drawings, play the video Finn had sent, explain every stolen detail. But he saw the wall in her eyes. She would not believe him tonight. Not yet. So he stayed silent, letting her words wash over him like cold rain. When Willow finally turned and walked upstairs, slamming her bedroom door, the house fell into a heavy quiet. Elias returned to the workshop alone. He stepped carefully through the scattered wreckage of tools and broken movements until he reached the center of the room. There, surrounded by the pieces of his life's work, he lowered himself to the floor. Tears rolled slowly down his face, one after another. He stared at the Hawthorne Memory Clock, still ticking softly on its stand. "Con đã chọn anh ta," he whispered into the darkness, voice thick with pain. "Bây giờ cha sẽ cho con thấy anh ta thực sự là ai." In that moment, something inside Elias Hawthorne changed forever. The quiet man who had spent decades repairing time decided it was time to stop time for someone else. Not through destruction, not through anger alone, but by turning the entire story around in front of the world and in front of his own daughter. He would make the truth impossible to ignore. The decision was made, and the clocks, for the first time in years, seemed to tick with new purpose. The East Coast Wearable Tech Summit buzzed with energy. Hundreds of investors, journalists, and tech enthusiasts filled the grand ballroom. Bright lights swept across the stage as Knox Sterling stepped into the spotlight, his tailored suit sharp under the glare. He smiled, with the same easy confidence that had won millions before. "Thank you all for being here," Knox began, voice smooth and commanding. "Today, I'm proud to present the next evolution of the Sterling Echo Watch, the device that doesn't just track time. It preserves what matters most, memory itself." The large screen behind him glowed with sleek graphics and pulsing heartbeats. In the front row, Willow sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap. She watched Knox with shining eyes, her heart beating in rhythm with the applause already rising around her. Then it happened. The screen flickered once and went completely dark. A ripple of confusion spread through the audience. Knox glanced back, still smiling, but his expression faltered as a new video began to play. Dr. Naomi Reyes appeared on the giant screen, calm and professional. "This is the true story of the memory mechanism," she said clearly. "It begins in 1987, in a small workshop in Stowe, Vermont. Old handwritten drawings filled the screen, yellowed paper covered in precise ink lines. Dates, notes, gear ratios. The soft voice of Dr. Reyes narrated every step. Next came photographs of Elias Hawthorne's workshop. The scarred benches, the tiny tools, the faded journals open to pages filled with careful handwriting. Then the museum archive records appeared, officially dated and stamped. Every detail matched the Sterling Echo Watch perfectly. The audience fell into stunned silence. Knox's face drained of color. He gripped the microphone tighter, his knuckles turning white. This is taken out of context," he stammered, voice cracking for the first time. "We developed our own version. There must be some misunderstanding." Before he could finish, Lena Voss rose from her seat in the third row. Her voice cut through the hall like ice. "As the lead investor, I am officially withdrawing all $8.7 million in committed funding, effective immediately. I demand a full independent audit of every claim made by Sterling Technologies." Gasps echoed across the ballroom. Knox's eyes darted wildly between Lena and the screen. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "I built this," he insisted, voice rising in panic. "My team worked day and night. The inspiration was mine. This is sabotage." but every word only made the contradictions clearer. The more he spoke, the deeper the hole became. Willow sat frozen in her chair. Her face had gone deathly pale. Her hands trembled in her lap as she stared at the screen, at her father's old drawings, at the workshop she had grown up in, at the truth unfolding in front of hundreds of strangers. She realized with a sickening wave of nausea that her father had been the one quietly providing every piece of evidence. The man she had accused of jealousy. The man she had dismissed as outdated. Her own father. The applause from earlier had turned into murmurs, then whispers, then uncomfortable silence, broken only by the clicking of cameras and frantic typing on laptops. Willow couldn't breathe. She stood up suddenly, legs unsteady, and pushed her way through the crowd toward the exit. Outside, cold rain poured down in sheets. She ran into the downpour, phone already pressed to her ear with shaking hands. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Elias did not answer. Instead, after the 4th ring, his voicemail clicked on. Willow stood trembling in the rain, water streaming down her face, mixing with the hot tears she could no longer hold back. Then came her father's voice, calm, tired, and heartbreakingly gentle. Con cần thấy sự thật bằng chính mắt mình, trước khi cha nói bất kỳ lời nào. The message ended. Willow lowered the phone slowly, staring at the screen through blurred vision. The rain continued to fall around her, soaking her expensive coat, washing away the last traces of the glittering world she had believed in. Inside the hall, the light still shone brightly on a stage that now felt empty. But outside, in the cold rain, Willow Hawthorne finally began to see. 2 months had passed since the rain in New York. The workshop in Stowe felt different now, quieter, but no longer empty. Elias Hawthorne opened the heavy wooden doors with the help of his old friend, Theo Langford. Together, the 2 men swept away the dust and cleared space on the scarred wooden benches. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows for the first time in weeks. Elias moved slowly, his hands remembering every familiar motion. He placed the Hawthorne Memory Clock back in its rightful spot on the center stand. That same afternoon, a car pulled up outside the workshop. Willow stepped out. She no longer looked like the polished young woman from New York. Her coat was simple, her hair tied back loosely, and her eyes carried a deep weariness. The bright confidence she once wore so easily had faded. In its place was a quiet, tired woman who moved with careful steps. She didn't say much at first. Instead, she began to help. Every morning, Willow arrived early. She swept the floor without being asked. She learned how to gently clean the old brass gears with soft cloths and cedar oil. Her hands, once used to laptops and presentations, slowly grew calloused in new, honest ways. Elias watched her in silence, his heart heavy with both pain and quiet hope. One afternoon, Finn Calder stopped by. He brought warm coffee and a gentle smile. "I know a place that might be good for you," he said softly. "An organization here in Vermont that preserves traditional crafts and cultural heritage. They need someone who understands storytelling and history. No pressure, but I think you'd be good at it." Willow looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Thank you, Finn." The days turned into weeks. Then came one quiet evening when snow began to fall softly outside the windows. Inside the workshop, only the warm glow of the hanging bulb lit the space. Elias and Willow sat side by side at the big workbench, tools spread carefully before them. Together, they worked on the final repairs to the Hawthorne Memory Clock, the very last one. Their hands moved in quiet rhythm. Willow held a tiny screwdriver while Elias guided her with patient, low words. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Willow's hands began to tremble. She set the tool down slowly and looked at her father, her eyes filling with tears. "Dad," her voice cracked. "I'm so sorry." The tears came freely then, the first time she had truly cried in front of him since she was a little girl. "I lost myself," she whispered, her shoulders shaking. "I chased the lights, the money, the promises, and I forgot who I was. I forgot what you taught me. I hurt you, I hurt us." Elias set his tools aside. He didn't rush to speak. He simply reached over and placed his rough, steady hand gently over hers. When her crying softened, He spoke, his voice low and warm as the light above them. A clock's true value, Willow, isn't in how fast it runs. It isn't in how loud it ticks or how many people notice it. Its real worth is whether it keeps ticking, even after everything around it has stopped. He looked at the memory clock between them, its hands moving steadily once more. Just like us. Willow wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her old sweater and gave a small, broken smile. They finished the repair together. When the final spring clicked into place, the Hawthorne Memory Clock came fully to life. Its soft, familiar tick filled the workshop steady, patient, and true. Later that night, father and daughter stood together at the large window. Outside, the small town of Stowe was lighting up against the falling snow. Warm yellow lights glowed softly in the distance. The steady ticking of the clock echoed gently behind them. Elias looked at his daughter, then out into the quiet night. Justice doesn't always arrive with noise and thunder, he said softly. Sometimes, it simply returns as the things that were always real, the things that refused to stop. Willow leaned her head gently against her father's shoulder. For the first time in many months, she felt something close to peace. The clock continued its quiet, faithful rhythm, ticking, healing, reminding them both that true strength is not measured by how fast we rise, but by what remains standing when the lights go out and the applause fades away. And in that small workshop, surrounded by the scent of cedar oil and the soft glow of renewed time, Elias and Willow Hawthorne began again. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for giving your time to this story. Some journeys shape us, and we hope this one left a mark on your heart. There are more paths ahead, more legends of love, hardship, and redemption beneath the western sky. Please subscribe, leave your thoughts, and travel with us once again. Thank you, and God bless. Aviso Legal. Disclaimer. The stories presented here are creative expressions and may mix historical inspiration with dramatized scenes. AI tools contribute to some elements of voice, imagery, and structure. But every published story is refined by editors and creators to ensure authentic emotional impact. We honor YouTube's policies and do not generate deceptive likenesses or artificial depictions of real people. All audio-visual components are legally licensed. Any use, redistribution, or alteration of this content must be granted through written consent. Your presence here means a lot. Thank you for supporting artistic storytelling.